In this talk, we report on findings from a series of 6 co-creation workshops with 26 technology and design practitioners that supported their creation of a bespoke, ethics-focused action plan. HCI scholars are interested in describing the complex nature of design and technology practice. A portion of this research is focused on the ethical engagement of practitioners on the ground, describing the ways in which ethics are situated, complex, and mediated by a range of individual, disciplinary, and organizational factors. We know that in an increasingly complex ethical landscape, UX and technology practitioners need resources to support both ethical awareness and their ability to act once they build the requisite levels of awareness. Consequently, over the past decade, academic efforts have resulted in toolkits, resources, and methods to support ethically focused design practices. In this work, we expand upon our previous concept of ethical design complexity, which describes the complex and choreographed arrangements of ethical considerations that are continuously mediated by the designer through the lens of their organization, individual practices, and ethical frameworks. This articulation of complexity as ecologically situated builds upon a range of ethics scholarship, which describes how practitioners engage in ethical decision-making and sense-making and seek to make changes based on their professional or organizational role. Based on our previous work, tools to support ethical awareness and action are generally not well known by practitioners, and frequently are not resonant or responsive to the felt complexity of practitioners' everyday work. Few studies have engaged with how practitioners adapt, extend, appropriate, and create methods to support their work in relation to ethical issues, and we hope our findings provide a foundation for this kind of work in the future. We make 2 primary contributions to the ethics, design, and HCI literature in this paper. First, we provide insights regarding the process moves that participants used to make sense of and activate their ethical design complexity, providing insights into aspects of resonance and ecological complexity, which could be used to support further method design and practice-led research. Second, we describe a range of roles that inform both method selection and design, supporting new approaches for operationalizing ethics in practice and supporting the activation of ethics-focused knowledge. To better understand the experiences of practitioners and study how to make their tools more resonant with their everyday complexity, we engaged a range of technology and design practitioners and students with professional experience in a series of virtual interactive activities to help them build their own action plan. Through these activities, they were organized into groups of either practitioners or students, identifying an ethical dilemma they faced in their everyday work, selecting relevant components of existing methods, and using these components to construct their own action plan in response. Across these interactions, we mapped each participant's trajectory of engagement in relation to their area of desired ethical impact, including both iterative toolkit drafts and the process moves that shaped their toolkits. In total, we included 26 participants in the study, 13 with industry experience in a range of professional roles, and 13 who were students who had industry experience they could leverage to build an appropriate plan. We conducted a total of 6 3-hour virtual co-design workshops with 4 to 6 participants per session. We hosted the co-creation sessions on Zoom and created a virtual house on Miro, a digital whiteboard platform for collaboration. The house was our visual metaphor for the entire experience, which contained 4 floors, each intended to foster an interactive and collaborative co-creation activity that stimulated the participants to collaborate, brainstorm, and work towards developing an action plan that would help them address the ethical complexities they experienced in their everyday practice. The first floor was designed to facilitate introductions and reflections on ethical dilemmas the participants intended to address. The second floor was designed as a shopping area where the participants could shop for different components that they could use to create an action plan that supported them in addressing the ethical dilemma they identified on the first floor. We populated this floor with a set of 73 method building blocks, deconstructed from a set of existing ethics-focused methods and curated to provide a range of different cores to support different kinds of toolkits and ethical dilemmas. These building blocks represent another important contribution of this work in service of our overall goals to improve practice resonance. In order to strengthen the ingredient metaphor for our participants, we selected a subset of methods from a larger set of 63 ethics-focused methods from a collection by Chivukula et al., which brings together existing methods from both practitioner and academic sources. We then decomposed 7 of these methods that represented a diversity of method type and framing, and used the visual elements contained within these methods to create 73 building blocks to populate the items contained within the shop floor of the virtual co-creation space. Sample aisles of the shop included intention themes, like identify ways to make your practice more ethically focused, or reimagine your design space. And shelf areas within these aisles contained bundles of blocks organized by action orientation, such as evaluating, creating design opportunities, or building alignment with your team and organization. Once the participants were done shopping for building blocks, the third floor was designed as a DIY workspace, where the participants used the methods they selected from the shop to design their action plans. After the initial action plans were created, they were paired with a new participant in a new breakout room to evaluate their method and identify how it would be needed to be altered to address a new context. Finally, the fourth floor was designed as a gallery space, where the participants could reflect on the action plans they created and share it with their fellow workshop participants. While the forms the action plans took were highly varied, here's one example of an action plan created by one of the study participants. Most plans included a varied selection of building blocks organized through arrows, sticky notes, and other elements to articulate their desired goals and outcomes. Through our analysis, we sought to identify how practitioners were building their action plans in this process, rather than evaluating the contents of the action plans themselves. To do this, we familiarized ourselves with the data, using journey mapping with individual participants serving as our unit of analysis. We then used qualitative content analysis, role analysis, and thematic analysis across all participants to better understand the roles that they took on and the process moves that helped them navigate towards their final action plan. Participants took on 3 primary roles as they created their ethics-focused action plans. These roles represented attitudes towards the ethical complexity of the work environment, indicating how the participants activated their ethical focus, and engaging with ethical potential changes to make them more ethically aware or active. These roles include the advocate, the operationalizer, and the reformer. The advocate is focused on taking action based on an intrinsic interest and awareness of their ethical role within their organization. Their focus in building their action plan through this role is to translate their personal awareness to others within their organization. In one example, a participant described how they wanted to advocate for the better side of the technology with other stakeholders in their organization when building their action plan. The operationalizer focuses their attention on a component of their practice and experience that relates to ethical awareness, but does not situate that knowledge in relation to broader ecological complexities that may have given rise to those ethical issues. In one example, a computer scientist focused on code efficiency and isolation and neglected to see how operationalizing this one component might not address other ecological implications of the proposed plan. The reformer recognizes that their vision of ethically focused action is not equally shared by others in their organization. As a result, they want to activate their desire for ethical change in ways that have impact or might affect change at the organizational or professional role level. As an example of reformer behavior, one practitioner described using a stop project option in their action plan to keep others from working on a project until ethical issues were fully addressed. As participants built and iterated upon their action plans, they leveraged 3 different process moves to navigate the components they chose to include and how they framed their ethics-focused goals. These process moves shaped how they managed the complexity of their ethical dilemma in relation to both their appreciative or value-related judgments and their instrumental or tool-related judgments. These process moves included refining, expanding, and diverging. In the refining process move, the practitioner narrows their design frame by identifying new areas of focus or removing unnecessary aspects, facilitating more focused attention to the detail of their action plan. As shown in the example, one participant chose to make the action plan more personal, using the refining move to navigate which changes were needed to be made. Importantly, the refining process move does not alter the overall appreciative system used to evaluate the success of outcomes, only how narrow the scope is relating to that appreciative system. In the expanding process move, the practitioner expands their design frame by including additional components, areas of focus, or areas of ecological complexity, facilitating broader coverage of functionality or use cases. In this example, a participant recognized more stakeholders and issues that their ethical concern could impact as they investigated further in building their action plan. In this case and others like it, the expanding process move changed or altered the overall appreciative system used to evaluate the success of outcomes. While some expanding moves resulted in a complete but larger scope, for this participant, they wish they had time to add in even more items to address the complexity they discovered. Finally, in the diverging process move, the practitioner alters the directionality of their design process based on emergent goals or interests, facilitating outcomes that appear more actionable or are better aligned with their goals. For one participant, they chose to diverge from data security impacts on the end user, instead recognizing opportunities to be proactive and identifying how and why these issues happen at the organizational level in the first place. The diverging process move is characterized by a change in the appreciative system that redefines what success means for the practitioner, even though many of these shifts still positively addressed important ecological, ethical factors in the reformulation process. Finally, we'd like to discuss how we learned from these participants and learned about how they used roles and process moves to create methods that supported their work practices. First, and perhaps unsurprisingly, different participants took different paths. These paths were mediated by their professional role, experiences, ethical sensitivity, and other factors. This diversity demonstrates how the creation and use of ethical resources might illuminate new areas of ethical awareness or concern, but also potentially create environments for ethics washing. Second, we identified how participants used different kinds of constraints to place limits on the design of their action plan. These included both intrinsic constraints, which deal with beliefs about how methods might support work practices, and self-imposed constraints, which leveraged the roles and process moves we identified to build an action plan out of a universe of possibilities. This sensitivity towards constraints and participants' ability to identify method building blocks to support their action plan design demonstrates that scaffolded method design spaces, such as the one that we used in this study, might be promising in allowing practitioners to support their work practices through co-design methods in other contexts. In this paper, we assert that design and technology practitioners are perhaps best placed to create ethical supports that are resonant with the ecological complexity of their everyday work. In keeping with that focus, future work should address what opportunities could be realized for scholars, educators, and practitioners alike if we view the majority of practitioners as capable of creating tools to support their own work practices. We thank the National Science Foundation for the support, and we appreciate your interest.